The issue that you raised about the hay shortage and the drought, so immediately on taking office, we would bring in the agri-recovery protocol, okay? That's maybe in the weeds, it's an ag policy that would help those producers respond to the local crisis that they're facing right now. In the longer term, we need to build up the infrastructure to mitigate climate change across the province. We have a huge example here in Winnipeg, but there's also needs in the interlake. And I'm not talking about the channels that are currently under construction. I'm also talking about communities like Peguis, which are some of the first to flood every springtime when there is flooding across the province. The other thing that I think we need to do with extreme weather in mind is, and I'm going to go back to this idea again, diversify Manitoba hydro away from being reliant solely on hydroelectricity. With increased climate change, there's an increased risk of drought. Since our grid is almost entirely reliant on hydroelectricity, drought is a huge risk to Manitoba hydro. What's going to have to happen is that we have to import electricity if there's a really severe drought in those years. However, if we act now, and I want to shout out my colleague Rob Altemeyer, who I see in the room, who's done a lot of work on this idea here. If we diversify Manitoba hydro away to other forms of renewable electricity like wind and solar, that will basically act as a backup plan if there is a drought year and hydro isn't able to run power off the dams. And that will keep us, at least potentially, carbon neutral, though we still got to deal with the human cost of hydro. It'll keep the energy carbon neutral. We won't have to import electricity from polluting jurisdictions.
So the drought and the floods we've seen shows what we're facing, and we'll face much worse if we fail to act and fail to get off fossil fuels right away. So I think that's just a key point to highlight to that. In terms of dealing with drought, one thing we need to do is restore our wetlands. We've lost about 70% of our wetlands in Manitoba, largely through development. So working with farmers, working with our Crown lands, working with First Nations, we need to restore wetlands, and not just restore larger ones, but restore a lot of the smaller ones. It's also worth noting that those cattle farmers that have been using regenerative techniques and intentional rotational grazing, they've had a lot less problems with drought. I mean, this is one of the things that regenerative agriculture and organic agriculture can offer, is actually more resilience to these. I mean, and it's one of the things that I think highlights the mistake of our sort of export-oriented, extractive way in which we run agriculture, and the need to push back towards a regenerative approach. And just lastly, we also need reforestation programs, right? We need to be replanting trees, putting back shelter belts. Anywhere where we have lands, we need to be putting those up. So I think that's, obviously I think how we can deal with it. Obviously we're going to have to support in the immediate term, but we have to focus on the bold vision, the long-term solutions. Thanks.
And part of it is that things haven't changed when it comes to how we manage the land in Manitoba for about 50 years. And if you even talk to the Keystone agricultural producers, they recognize that we're still basically stuck in what they would call frontier times, where you just go and you clear everything off the land, you drain the slough, you cut down all the trees, and you try to extract everything you possibly can from the most marginal land. So farmers themselves are asking for change. They don't want to keep having land like this. And the other is that we've changed because they get the water off the land as quickly as possible every spring. And the result of that is that you're more likely to have droughts. It means you're more likely to flush water into rivers and lakes where you have too much fertilizer going into Lake Winnipeg. So we have to have a strategy. One, revisit land use as a priority, rebuild wetlands, encourage farmers to plant trees, provide, there's a program called ALICE, Alternative Land Use, which is essentially rewarding farmers for improving the environment, and that's something we would see. The other is more regenerative agriculture as well. But the most important thing, there was a piece in the Cooperator that said, look, especially with pollution of Lake Winnipeg, if you can control the water, you can control the pollution. So the most important thing we can do is to work with municipalities, First Nations, and farmers to make sure that they're holding back water in a way that works so that it's there when they need it. as well later on into the season. It's a huge priority. It's all part of our plan. Thank you.